Hey, it's Matt, your average gamer, and for this one, I'm going to be covering 5 of my favorite builds that I've done lately. This is basically a summary video, more or less. It's going to be really enjoyable. We're going to talk about the builds in further detail, and first up is the Golden Order Fundamentalist build. The Golden Order Fundamentalist build ended up being a little bit of a wild one because I realized how good triple Rings of Light ended up being against larger targets in the game, like the dragons and such. It absolutely destroys them, and the Coated Sword's a really fun holy weapon. It maintains an A in faith scaling while also doing a reasonable amount of posture damage. It is quite good. It's also fairly lightweight, and it was really fun mixing in the Golden Order incantations with the Coated Sword. By the way, if you're looking for build details, everything's in the description below if you need any further details, but I'm going to go over each one so you know all the items and stuff. But as far as getting all the items, they're in the videos in the link below, and everything is timestamped as well. We'll go over equipment in this entire video, but if you need the locations, the specific locations on the items, definitely be sure to check out the links in the description below, and let's get into equipment for this one. For equipment, we have the Coated Sword plus 10, we have the Golden Order Seal, we have the Brass Shield, we have the Radiant Gold Mask, we have the Beast Champion Armor Set, Guardian Bracers, Royal Knight's Greaves. Then for our talisman setup here, we have the Sacred Scorpion Charm for that holy boost, and then we have the Phlox Canvas Talisman because that'll boost the incantations. And we have the Shard of Alexander because that'll boost the damage on the Coated Sword's Unblackable Blade. We have Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, and then we have the Holy Tier, and then you can use something like the Faith or the Defense Tier. Let's get into stats for this build. For stats, this is an Intelligence and Faith build. Mainly, you're going to concentrate, though, on Faith. Once you get to 45 of both, if you're continuing to level up, level Faith after that, but the Golden Order Seal has the highest scaling in the game, and it works really well for Faith and Intelligence builds. Awesome setup and awesome build idea. That was a really good time as far as the Golden Order Fundamentalist build, and the next one up that we have here is the Rotten Duelist build, which ended up hitting really hard and was able to proc Rot really well with the addition of Warcry. Warcry actually has a multiplier on it, so when you're using a strength build like this one, we have it on heavy affinity as far as the Rotten Duelist acts, you'll get a multiplier on the status effect. It's like 2 to 3 times as much, so every hit is going to build up really quickly. Most of the time, 2 hits on any boss that you can proc Rot, and you're going to get Rot on them. Special attack you get from Warcry or any of the roars, there's a couple better ones, worse ones, whatever they are. You usually get a special attack as far as the charged attack goes, and they all seem to have that multiplier as far as it goes. Warcry is really accessible, so I ended up using that one. But yeah, you get that multiplier, and you get to hit stuff really hard too. Yeah, with the special charge attacks, I was getting around 3,000 damage per hit, so getting that amount per hit while also being able to proc Rot is a nice little bonus on top of everything else, and it ends up turning into a really solid build. By the way, all the footage here on this entire video is New Game Plus 7, so everything's at the max HP. I definitely put the Rotten Duelist one up there for me. It was one of the ones for me that I was surprised how hard it was hitting because I hadn't really used roars a ton, but now using them more often, I realized how powerful they can be. And then the fact, obviously, you get the status effect multiplier is a nice bonus too. Let's get new equipment for this one. For equipment, we have the Rotten Great Axe. We have Warcry on it in heavy affinity. Any seal will do. We have the Raptor's Black Feathers on, Ritual Swords Talisman, Axe Talisman, Roar Medallion, Dragon Crest Shield Talisman, preferably the Great Shield. And then we had in the Charge tier and the Faith tier so we can do our buffs as well. And don't forget the Highland Axe passive will also boost you even further. Let's get into stats. For stats, this is a strength-focused build here. Even though this axe ends up getting a B in heavy affinity, it doesn't really matter. It actually beats out Keen anyway, which you get an A, which really doesn't make sense. But some of the scaling in the game is a little bit weird. Don't worry about that. Go for heavy affinity if you're a strength build. You get a ton of damage from the Rotten Great Axe. The next build up here is my favorite build of all time, and it's a variant on the All Fire build. This is an incredibly powerful one that's faith-based, and honestly, it was a blast to do the video that I did a little while back, and this one can destroy bosses while also, again, having a really good time because it's really versatile. Now, Faith really does. It does have that versatility. There's no question about it because you have fire damage, you have lightning damage, you have holy damage, but more important to the point is you can throw flame art on pretty much anything and get really high AR as well. It's precisely what I was doing with the Grave Scythe, which has near colossal AR, putting flame art on it and Black Flame Tornado for the damage, and then mixing in Burno Flame with dual giant seals for that damage as well, because fire damage in Elden Ring is very solid. Yeah, also, I was really a fan, by the way, of the whole pyromancy thing thing when it comes to Dark Souls and whatnot, and it was very overpowered then, and it carries over well to Elden Ring 2, where you can get a lot of damage for the majority of bosses, and it can be very overpowered. And as you're going to see the end of the fight here, Morgott ends up going down once again on New Game Plus 7. Not the toughest boss in the game, but even so, he's got the maximum amount of HP, and we're able to take him down fairly quickly, mixing in different fire incantations as well as Black Flame Tornado. And now we can get into equipment for this build, and again, this is probably my favorite build on this list. Let's get into equipment. For equipment, we had the Grave Scythe and Flame Art Affinity with Black Flame Tornado. We had dual Giant Seals. I was using the Crucible Axe set. It's an armor set I really like. Fire Scorpion Charm, Shard of Alexander, Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, Ritual Swords Talisman, and then the Fire tier and Faith tier are solid as well. Let's get into stats. As far as Black Flame Tornado and Burno Flame go, they both pull directly from your Faith stats, so don't really worry too much about anything else. Make sure you have the stats for something like the Grave Scythe, and then just worry about your Faith stat, Vigor, Endurance, and all the basic stuff. There's the stats there as far as that goes. Again, just Faith-based, just go as heavily in Faith. You're going to get more damage out of it. You're going to get incredible damage out of it. And next up here was the Posture Breaking Machine build that we did. I know you guys know about this one already, but we'll go over it again real quick, and this does incredible posture damage. Square Off is seriously underrated. Even though it's locked behind straight swords, it does 40 poise damage on its attack, and then if you combine it with glint blades, you get a total of 80 poise or posture damage per each first interaction with the boss, and then upon activating it again, you can get posture breaks like crazy. It is the definition of a heavy-hitting critical hit build. This is definitely going to be one of those critical hit builds that can take on bosses and knock them down frequently, if not more than any other build, because I can't think of many other things that are going to get you 80 poise damage upon first interaction. Damage on Square Off isn't bad either. As far as the charged attack goes, it's about double what you get on a normal charged attack. And again, 40 poise damage on each hit in combination with the glint blades totals 80, which is a phenomenal amount to take on any of the bosses, even the late game bosses in Elden Ring. Now, when I mentioned that number 80 is significant because some of the smaller bosses like Melania and such only have 80 poise, but even the higher ones have between 120 and 150. So you do this twice essentially, and you're going to be posture breaking anything and getting that critical hit. Yeah, basically, when you're fighting a boss with a build like this, they're just going to be constantly poise broken time and time again. So if you're looking for an easy mode in Elden Ring, this is a setup you definitely need to check out. You don't have to worry about investing in magic or intelligence or anything because you're just using the glint blades for the poise damage, because each glint blade does 10 for a total of 40. You're not worried too much as far as the damage goes there. You're going to go more for a dexterity or a strength build depending on what affinity you settle for. While we're waiting here, before we go into equipment, I just want to mention real quick, if you're not subbed to this channel and you love overpowered PvE builds, definitely be sure to hit that subscribe button. You're not going to want to miss out. We'll be doing non-stop Elden Ring builds and content until DLC comes out, and then we'll be covering DLC like crazy too. Alright, with that being said, let's get into equipment for this build. For equipment, we had the Noble Slender Sword. I think we had it in Keen Affinity with Square Off on it, and then we had Rozier's Rapier, which had the glint blades on them. Any seal will do. We had the Lendl Knight set on, which hit 51 poise, Dagger Talisman, Shard of Alexander, Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman. We have the Ritual Swords Talisman, and then the Charge tier and Faith tier, so we can do some buffs as well. Let's get into stats for this one. For stats, we were in Keen Affinity, so we went heavily in Dex. If you want to go for Strength, you can also go in Heavy Affinity and then choose your straight sword that you end up choosing. If you're really high level, you can go for some Intelligence, and then you can get some damage on the glint blades too. Overall, though, a really powerful and definitely overpowered build. Square Off is definitely an underused Ash of War. Again, the 40 poise damage is really incredible, and it's relatively quick, too. The Noble Slender Sword has a little bit of extra length as far as straight swords goes also. And next up is the final build on here, and that is the Blood Witch. Now, as far as this build goes, it's not as overpowered as some of the other ones that we've went through, but you're going to be using Briars of Sin and Briars of Punishment, and they have decent bleed build-up, and they do have really relatively decent damage. Again, not incredibly overpowered, but really enjoyable to use and a little bit underused. When I tried out an Arcane Mage, that was kind of the first time I did this with this build, because I really wasn't familiar with Briars of Sin and Briars of Punishment, and if it's something that you haven't used, I definitely suggest trying it out. Again, it's not super overpowered or ridiculous, but you can get a decent amount of bleed out of it and good damage. You could even, at higher levels, combine it with something like Swarm of Flies. And since you're arcane based, you can use an occult weapon. I had an occult, I think, Nagakiba, or the starting katana with Bloodblade on it, and you're going to get a ton of damage out of it anyway, simply for the fact that you're in occult, and then you have the innate scaling on the bleed as well. We used everything in this fight, as you can see on screen. We ended up using Briars of Sin, Briars of Punishment, Swarm of Flies, and then the Occult Katana with Bloodblade on it. The combination of everything does make for a solid, well-rounded build that can build up a ton of bleed and do reasonable damage. And down goes Mog. That wasn't too hard of a fight, but again, he is weak to bleed, so it's a nice little bonus there. But on New Game Plus 7, I think he's got around 25 to 28,000 HP, which is a fair bit after all. But even so, again, weak to bleed, so this is a nice build to take on Mog. Go over equipment here in a second, and then I'm going to talk about a few things at the end of this video. Let's jump into equipment for this build. For equipment, we have the Alberneric Staff because it scales with Arcane. You're going to want that at plus 10. We had the starting Katana or Nagakiba works on Occult with Bloodblade on it. We had the Dragon Communion Seal because it scales with Arcane. We had the Staff of the Guilty for the passive boost. Albric Set because it boosts the damage on the sorceries we're using. Shard of Alexander, Graven Mask Talisman, Dragoncrest Great Shield Talisman, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, and the Magic Tier. Stats, this was on my level 200 character, which is my Mage, but generally speaking, you're going to want around 60 Arcane, and then you're going to want to get Faith to 23, and then you can use the Faith tier to get it to 33, so that you can use Hal for that damage boost as well as Golden Vow. Alright, and at the end of the video here, I just wanted to state real quick, as far as the next builds go, I've been putting up polls recently, so definitely interact with that. And as far as if you want something seen, definitely go on the Discord and put it in the channel build suggestions. I've been getting to a lot of them lately. It's been really cool. They've been really detailed. People have done a great job with them, and we're able to turn them into awesome Elden Ring builds that are a ton of fun as well. If you're not on the Discord, definitely be sure to join that. Over 500 people in there now. It's an awesome growing community, and if you're not subbed and you love overpowered PvE builds, be sure to check out all the awesome builds that are on my channel. Thanks for watching, and as always, I will catch you guys there.